Well, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us for today's Manulife Business Success Series webinar. We're going to discuss the Business and Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region, supporting and advocating for business during COVID-19. My name is Ian McLean. I'm the President and CEO of the Greater Kitchener-Waterloo Chamber of Commerce. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge that we do live and work on the traditional territory of the Neutral, Anishinaabe, and Haudenosaunee peoples as we seek a renewed relationship based on a foundation of mutual understanding and respect. As participants in today's virtual event, we are coming together as one. We believe everyone is free to be their true self and receive the same respect and opportunity regardless of age, ethnicity, gender, culture, identity, sexual orientation, beliefs, or language. We hope you will join us in fostering a positive environment for here today that is a safe and welcoming space for all. We know there's more to do that we can do as a chamber, and we are committed to listening, learning, and growing as we go. Today's session would not be possible without the continued support of our sponsors, so a special thank you to our title sponsor for the Business Success Series, Manulife, our platinum sponsor for the series, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, and to this month's presenting sponsor, Grant Thornton. These organizations and many others that support our chamber are committed to supporting our local economy and providing businesses with the resources and tools they need to thrive. Just before the session starts, I'd like to go over a few quick reminders. Please ensure that your microphone is muted throughout the presentation so we can reduce any background noise. If you have any questions that come up throughout the session, you can type them into the question box in your control panel at any time. If they're tech related, a representative of my team will be back to you in just a few moments. And as I say, if there are questions for today's presenters, I'll look for those throughout the session and incorporate them throughout our discussion. All attendees will be sent a recording of today's presentation. It will also be made available on the Greater KW Chamber website. I'd like to now introduce my colleagues from the BEST Waterloo, the Business Economic Support Team of Waterloo Region Leadership Team. Tony Lamantia is the President and CEO of the Waterloo Region Economic Development Corporation. University of Waterloo alumnus, Tony had ties to the community for decades before helping to found Waterloo EDC as the organization's inaugural leader in 2016. A community builder at heart, he relishes the opportunity to work with businesses, civic leaders, governments, and organizations like chambers of commerce and the tech ecosystem anchors to help build a strong, sustainable economy for the people of Waterloo Region. Minto Snyder is the CEO of the Waterloo Region Tourism Marketing Corporation. She joined the organization in 2013. Minto has a strong background in the tourism business. She began her career with Hilton International in Vancouver after graduating from the hotel program at BCIT. After a few moves with Hilton in sales and marketing positions from Vancouver to St. John, New Brunswick, Toronto and Halifax, she left the hotel business to join Tourism Nova Scotia. She spent over a decade with the provincial marketing organization before trying her hand as a tour operator and moving south of the border to Westport, Connecticut, where she joined Talk World Discovery as a product manager initially and moving into sales. In his 21st year, it only feels like it's about 1,000, but in his 21st year as president of the CEO of the Cambridge Chamber of Commerce, Greg DeRocher has an extensive service, has contributed extensive service to his community. While in the private sector, Greg chaired the business improvement area and for 9 years represented the Preston area of Cambridge as a city councillor. In 2000, he ran for mayor and lost by 26 votes to Doug Craig in the closest mayoral race in Cambridge's history. Greg is Canada's representative on the executive board of the Association of Chamber of Commerce Executives, a global organization, as their international chamber executive responsible for international development of chamber professionals across the rest of the world outside of the US. Greg volunteers his time with several organizations, and when Greg is not in the office, home, or at a chamber event, or at the cottage, you'll find him on the golf course, except for today, because he's joining us here on his regular golf day. Matt Bondi is a public affairs leader with extensive communications, media governance, and partnerships experience. He proudly served as Deputy Chief of Staff to the current Premier of Ontario. A former Army Reservist, Matt holds a Master's of Arts degree in Political Science from the University of Waterloo. He has written extensively on public policy and foreign policy topics for foreignpolicy.com. opencanada.org, and other publications. A committed volunteer, including at his family's home parish, the Church of the Holy Savior in Waterloo. In 2012, Matt was awarded the Queen's Diamond Jubilee Medal. And I believe he's got a new appointment as the chair of the Trillium Foundation. So congratulations to Matt, and thank you all of my colleagues for joining us. This is a distinct pleasure. I know we did this about a month ago with Greg on his chamber chat. I wanted to take the opportunity to do the same thing with our members and friends of the Greater KW Chamber. So. And just as a reminder, anyone that's listening in, please, I'll be keeping an eye on the chat box if you have any specific questions to follow up on throughout the session. But we'll get started. My mom, oh yeah, okay, I'll leave that aside. Listen, I think place to start maybe with you, Tony, is an overview, or what is Best Waterloo. I think this was came from a discussion or some thoughts that you had early on, very early on in the pandemic, of how we should be working together, because we all knew each other, but we didn't, I don't think, had a formal mechanism in the way it's structured now. So tell us about the start of Best Waterloo.
Yeah, thanks, Ian, and good afternoon to all the attendees. So when we got the sense that social and economic life would dramatically change with this pandemic in early March, it started off really as a way for an organization that's primarily focused on bringing foreign direct investment to the region and helping local companies scale, as a way for us to be relevant. So we thought, listen, the focus has got to be local here. It really has to be local, and even though this is a global pandemic, how are we as a community going to respond? And how do we make sure that we can help businesses navigate this at a time where, we're learning as we're doing, we're going to have some public policy decisions that have to be made, and we're going to have to essentially give real-time feedback to municipal, provincial, and federal governments and policymakers, so the politicians and the public servants. But then we're going to have to quickly disseminate the program support down. And so it made sense to come up with a construct that would allow us to do that. And essentially, if you think of an hourglass, we'd be the screeners in the middle, filtering up what we think is the most important information, and then feeding back down the response. So you come up with a virtuous cycle, and then it came down to who's got to be a part of it. It was a no-brainer, obviously, to have Communitech and the two chambers and tourism. But once we finished the structure, we ended up with like 9 subcommittees, 88 members, the not-for-profits, the development sector, the tech sector, you name it. And it unleashed a lot of collaboration, a lot of creative thinking, and really important programs. So, when I just think about the leadership group, 7 letters, 3 op-eds, tons of Zoom calls, and things like webinars on how to access the programs, ask an expert through the chamber check. It led to the rapid test programs and kind of the free masks, digital Main Street being launched. So it really has blossomed into something that was necessary, for our community, and it's been looked at, around the world as a model of sort of how to respond. So I think we'll look back on this and say that it was a very kind of unique time, unprecedented time, but we did the right thing. And the best indication that it's been successful is that we don't need to exist. So I can't wait for the day when we don't need to do this, because we're looking at better days. We're not there yet, obviously, and there's some more work to do. But that's essentially how this started. And in typical Waterloo Region fashion, nobody worried about lead horse or kind of resources, or kind of thought it was insane. They said, give it a try, let's see how it goes. And and we've learned by doing.
So I think there's the leadership group, of which our 5 organizations kind of are the, as you say, the thin part of the hourglass. Minto, maybe talk a little bit about the, which I thought was equally as important, was the subcommittees. I think that's where you put a lot of time and effort into, obviously marketing, or sorry, the tourism and hospitality sector, restaurants that are your bread and butter of your organization, who were first to close and will be last to fully open. Maybe talk about the committee and how hearing directly from them and then feeding it into not only your own organizations, but through this Best Waterloo construct.
Well, thanks for that question, Ian. It's good to be able to talk about it, because it seems like a long time ago in some ways, and in other ways it seems so recent. When everything first hit, we were trying to figure out how long it was going to last and what we could do to support our businesses. So we started having some calls, and then determined that it might be better to have a group of the people that we were speaking to that were kind of taking leadership roles or had a lot of contacts, to sit around the table together and talk about what were concerning them. So we started a tourism and culture subcommittee that ended up becoming a subcommittee of Best Waterloo Region, only because we'd started it, maybe a week and a half before Best Waterloo Region started. And we looked at a lot of issues, and one, well, a couple specifically, but one was, and it took a little while to kind of make it happen, was getting mental health support for hospitality workers, because the longer the lockdown went, the more issues we were seeing, not just in the hospitality industry, but specific to the hospitality industry. And we were able to work with Carazon in the region through the work of this committee to have the region rally to have a dedicated line for those people to call. And we did a lot of training sessions. We talked about some of the challenges that there were from the regulations that were being presented to our businesses from the provincial, municipal, and federal standpoint, and everyone was confused about if they fit in a certain category. It was not just hospitality businesses, but small business as well. So we were able to bring some of those concerns to this committee, and found that we had a lot of like concerns across our industries. That we were able to take up to either the municipal, provincial, or federal level to say, okay, we need clarification on this. And we're still seeing that happen. After all this time, it still seems that there are some things that are just not clear as far as regulations are concerned. So those are just a couple of things. And then we got the Ambassador Public Health Inspector program going. That only launched a couple of weeks ago, but that's been tremendously helpful for small business to have a friendly face, if you will, come to talk to them about what is allowed and what is recommended as far as safety standards are concerned.
That's helpful, and I think, Matt, one of the things that came out of this group, and of course, Ian Klugman, a colleague, has just recently left Communitech, but was doing a lot of different things, and so he imposed on you to be part of this group, because he was working with the federal government on a variety of other things that were sort of pan-Canadian. So you've been with this group for quite some period, like right almost from the beginning. Maybe talk the importance of this group in terms of government relations and communicating with decision makers, because that's, I think, one of the most, if it's been effective, it's been because we've been able to with one voice talk about small business and technology and hospitality and what job creators and economic development are saying. The importance of speaking with one voice and knowing how and when and how to be helpful, talking with public officials, whether it's bureaucrats or elected officials, municipally, federally, and provincially.
Absolutely. Thanks, Ian and Greg, for the opportunity to join in today. This is great. And yeah, it has been a fantastic experience to get to work with you all. I mean, I think your chamber members know what great hands they're in when it comes to advocacy. You two and your colleagues, as well as Tony and Minto from their sectors, just some of the best, because you're always on the ball. You're always tracking the issues that your members care about, and so it's been great to get to learn from you all and work with you a little bit. On the government relations side, I think it's been so interesting, and as you alluded to, Ian, we talked about this a little bit on one of the other shows we've had an opportunity to do together, where one of the secret sauces that we have in this region is that we genuinely are in a real, intangible way collaborative. And it sounds like a talking point because we hear it so much here in the region, but it does happen to be true. And so, you know, one of the big cards that we've had to play is that collaborative spirit. And so, you know, the way that we've talked about it, I know during our Best Waterloo Region leadership team meeting, and I know this will resonate with everyone else, is that when any one of our organizations speaks, if a government wants to, they can kind of ignore it, right? You can ride that out if one group is chirping at you. But when the entire business community, you know, we're a massive cross section of the business community in a serious, fast growing, economically relevant region like Waterloo Region speaks with one voice, you can't ignore that. And so, you know, we've leveraged, I think, our ability to work together collaboratively and speak with one voice, and done it in a way that's been about being helpful and trying to solve problems. And, you know, you asked me to speak about the government relations piece a little bit, and I would just close by saying, you know, when it comes to government relations, as we've talked about many times, as a leadership team and with our subcommittees, it's been a whole community pulling together through this subcommittee structure we've had, right? You know, you can either be helpful in problem solving, or you can, you know, just wait, be reactive, and complain a lot. And we're about thing one, not thing two. And I think it's worked pretty well.
Well, I think that has, I think it's put us in good stead in terms of whether we are being listened to, or at least have the open channel of communication, which is the first step in being listened to. Listen, I guess the question, I'll ask it this way with some details to follow. So, what is Best Waterloo for you personally? And I say that because in some ways it's about the strategy, about how we serve our members and the issues that are facing the municipality and business in the community, but also things like the mental health of the community. This has been a very trying experience for our own staff, our members, business owners in the community. You know, to me, it's a bit of almost a therapy session. Sometimes we get on a couple of times a week when we get frustrated, because it's not good for us to be frustrated in public. But you know, there's a lot of components to what we've done, and I would point out to folks, I think early on we were doing this 3 times a week. I think it was 3 times a week early on for an extended period of time. We're down to a couple times a week for an hour. There's always something to talk about. So just in that context, what has it meant to you in terms of your own position with your organization, and what's the value that you've got it out personally? Because I think that's important. Leaders need to be supported in the work that they're doing as well. Maybe start with Minto.
Yeah, I think I'm just wondering if you're avoiding asking Greg any questions, or if that's deliberate.
Oh, geez, did I not ask Greg? Oh my God. No, I didn't. We'll come back to him. I got one.
I think, you know, just as Matt said, having an opportunity to share the issues that come from our specific industry with all of you, and understand that it's not just small business, it's not just tourism, it is some of the issues that we have go across the whole region, go across the whole business community. It feels like you're not just a voice in the dark. You're sitting with a group of colleagues who are experiencing the same thing, and feeling like with our collaborative, we're able to be heard at the municipal, provincial, and federal table. And I think for me, that has been the most valuable, because it's hard. It's really hard. And having you to, you know, air our concerns with some things that I can tell you, my husband doesn't want to listen to them anymore. So you guys are the ones that are subjected to my rants, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, I'm going to take a pause there, because speaking of rants, and I totally apologize, because I actually had the last part of the first question was for Greg, because he and I both have been around sufficiently long enough. Greg's been there since Christ was a carpenter. I've been there for 10 years. But the Prosperity Council was really, Greg, was the precursor to what Tony constructed, which is Business Economic Support Team. I think the difference is stark, is that maybe it's the pandemic, but maybe talk about the difference between what the Prosperity Council was and what the success that Best Waterloo has been, which has been, I think we're a bit more granular, and we're actually, you know, dealing with more real problems for the community.
Well, I think from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, you know, Best Waterloo suits certainly my flavor a lot better than the old Prosperity Council did. The old Prosperity Council was really, they were, big picture things. What can we work towards? Where can we find champions to lead certain areas and certain aspects of the community, which is important to do, but there are lots of organizations doing that. I think what Best Waterloo has meant to me, it's been the diversification of business and industry in our region coming together, and advocating with a single voice. So Chambers of Commerce largely made up of small micro businesses, small businesses, family businesses, that kind of thing. We've got Communitech that is tech centric to a great degree, and startup centric, which is a really important part of our economy. We've got Explore Waterloo Region, which is really the hospitality tourism industry, the icing on the cake, more or less. And then we've got Tony there, who is really the umbrella organization for economic development, and deals a lot with larger companies who are making big decisions to move into the area or hire people for the area. So I think you couldn't have found a better complex of organizations to be involved with a single focus of what can we do to help businesses through a pandemic. And I think the real genuine derivative out of the whole thing was, not only are they the right organizations, I really think they were the right people and the right personalities to do this. We have Matt with his extensive experience in communication from a very high level in a political sphere. We have Tony with his background and work in the provincial government, which is not just a short stint. It was a long stay, and at an ADM level that is really important for us to lean on and have. And then Minto's experience of having worked in the industry that she heads up for a long time, not just in our area, but in other areas, and can bring that diverse kind of thought-provoking and intelligent leadership from our perspective. And then it's, Ian and I, we slug it out on Main Street, Ontario all the time with small businesses and small family businesses that are just trying to eke out their dream. And our personalities, all of us have certainly exactly the same passion for what we were doing. But more importantly, we all brought that flavor to the table that I think was important in being a driving force towards achieving a lot of fantastic things that our group did over the last 15 months.
I don't know if I just lost Matt, so I think I'll maybe go back to oh, there he is. There he just, I thought he was going to. Let me go to you, Tony, back to what has it meant to you? I think that's important in terms of how it supported your organization or you personally, or both.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to keep it really simple. We're in this state of emergency, the biggest health emergency that I've experienced in my lifetime. I'm in a leadership position in a community that welcomed me. Am I going to be a player or a spectator? I mean, life's full of sidelines. So it was easy. It's what can I help? What can I do to support? I mean, early on it was calling Bosch, to see if I could get, would share their specs on ventilators because we didn't have any. So I was doing all that, that kind of stuff. And one of the things that I'm particularly proud of is efforts towards getting PPE capacity in Waterloo Region. We went from essentially zero to over 90, 100 companies in a matter of months, and companies like Eclipse Automation making major pivots, Canadian Shield, getting Prime-Ed to set up a major facility in Cambridge. So, stronger together. You hear all the platitudes, but it's I go back to my high school football coach, right? You want to play. It's no fun being on the sidelines, and we're in leadership positions. So it was, it was just a way for me to do something as opposed to watch things happen, right? So, yeah.
Matt, I think the Communitech piece in that same vein. What has it meant to you? I mean, as far as Communitech stepped up on when and took some leadership on PPE, Amber French and Ian and some of the gang of just collecting, let alone pivoting and having businesses start to produce it. Of just, we needed stuff in March and April so that the hospitals could care for people and be safe. So what has it meant, you know, in terms of your participation in this, both for Communitech and for you, because you're fairly new to your role with Communitech. You weren't there for a whole length of period, although you're a Waterloo guy. So reflect on that a bit.
Yeah. So I obviously echo what everyone else has said so far. I'll maybe provide a couple of quick comments to that. One, to your point about, you know, relatively new at Communitech, been there for about a year and a half now. This organization has been a bit of an incubator for me in terms of the portfolio I carry, which is external relations. So being able to work with critical economic partners in the region, as well as social partners, which we do in a few other forums. That has been fabulous for me because now I don't just know the names of the people who run these organizations. You guys are friends. And I think that's what our stakeholders expect. They expect us to work together. And everybody outside of Waterloo region thinks that this is how we operate all the time. And whether we do or not, that's a standard that we have to aspire to, right? And so I think that this has been hugely helpful in that piece. I think that another benefit of the relationships that we built with one another and the familiarity we have with the issues that we respectively face is that this sets a great groundwork for my new CEO, Chris Albinson, who is joining Communitech. Just joined last month. He's got terrific experience in venture capital. He's a proud Canadian. He was in the Valley for 20 years, and he's come back because in his, to use his sports metaphor, he thinks Canada is where the puck is going. So I think that this extensive work we've done to lay this groundwork together as a home team is a great launch pad for Chris to take his vision of Waterloo region in Canada owning the podium for tech forward. And I think maybe just, you know, sorry, Tony, were you going to jump in there?
No.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was just going to say, I think that the region expects this of us. And so it has been a real honor to get to work with different economic agencies, specifically because I think that we in the tech sector are trying to bridge a bit of a gap. I think there's a sense that there's the business community and then there's the tech community. And one of the main messages that I and Communitech have for the government of Ontario and Canada is no. We deal primarily with tech-driven startups and scaling and at-scale companies. That's true. These are businesses that create intangible assets for Canada, create jobs for Canadians, create prosperity for us and our communities and our kids. And so this opportunity to hang out a little bit more with our fellow economic agencies in the region has been fabulous in getting that message across. So I've really appreciated that.
Gregory, you know, this has been, I mean, we've always worked closely together. You know, I always joke, you've only been there 50 years. It only feels like forever. I've been there 10 and a half. I was getting you back because you did this to me when on your own show. But we spent a lot of time together over these 10 years doing the radio show. We do advocacy together. This extended group that Matt was just describing of all of us being together is, I think, I don't know whether it's a logical extension, but I think it's a very beneficial one for us, is that we round out the parts where we're not as, our membership are not as strong in. And you know, as an example, tech, people gravitate to, if you're in tech, to Communitech. So we don't have as many, we do have some, but as many. I think this has really rounded it out. But how has that helped you and I in the chamber movement to the work that we're doing is to be part of this group?
Well, Tony would probably say knowledge is power. That's, you know, and that's really, really important. And I think you're exactly right. You use the word rounded. I would probably look at it and say, well, you know, I've worked for 20 years with Communitech, not just Ian Klukman, but his predecessor as well. I've worked, you know, for years, actually, we were a DMO, a tourism organization on ourselves as well until we made some modifications. And even, way back at the beginning of time when the economic development group in the region started to morph through, and what Tony blended into a true passionate organization to attract industry here. I've worked with all of the organizations, but I've never worked, I don't think, personally with individuals. We've always had our meetings throughout the course of the year, 3 or 4 or 5 meetings, but never really had the opportunity to work personally on virtually a daily basis, because we exchanged emails virtually every day for many months. And I think from my perspective, Ian, for a Chamber of Commerce, I think what it's done is it's rounded our edges and brought in some value add for us going forward as organizations, to say we've now got not just keen contacts, because we always had those contacts. We've got keen contacts and relationships that we've built that are going to strengthen all of our organizations. And it's going to be very simple now. It doesn't matter who is in our respective roles, for the organizations to come together and work and focus on a priority for our region. And I think that, from my perspective, is, if you want to look at the silver lining of a pandemic, the silver lining of a pandemic from my perspective has been that we're going to come out of this, and all economic forces in the region are going to be joined at the hip, and we're going to be marching forward to build back a lot better than we ever anticipated. So I think that's the benefit from my perspective, from all of our organizations, but in particular from the Chamber's perspective.
One of the questions just come in the chat box. Tanya talks about, and says appreciates how we've collaborated together. I think there's a sense that has happened. And but the question that at the end of that is, how do community members integrate their ideas into the Best Waterloo Collective? And I think maybe Minto and Tony, maybe a quick comment on the working groups, because I think one of the things you said, Tony, and I think this is the broader question, is this came together and we're having these regular meetings and we've got these subcommittees, and that may die off, or not die off, but it may come to a natural conclusion once the pandemic's over. But I hope that this construct of the leadership staying connected, as Greg and we've all talked about, is very useful. But I think part of that, the utility of it, is that the community feels that it can, through our organizations, be part of that discussion. So maybe I'll start with you just around the committee structure a little bit, and then Minto, you were on one of the, as you described, because not everyone's on the committee, but how do people actually get their feedback in there? So maybe start with Tony and then go to Minto on that.
Yeah, it really isn't rocket science. All of the committees came up. They were all tasked to come up with their 3 most important issues, and that was communicated up. All the meetings were minuted, and as they needed to have these addressed, they would come up through to the leadership group for consideration for action, and that action usually meant advocacy, right? Like, get these on the table for government decision makers. And one of the things, it's funny, when I think about how we structured this, one of the things that we got right, and I'm really proud of, was that we did not change, the client account management relationships. I thought it would be really important, if you were used to dealing with your BIA or with the Cambridge Chamber or with, the Tourism Marketing Organization or Communitech, you didn't want to mess with that, right? That's not what this is about. That because they all have their own, there's an Ontario BIA association, there's a National Tourism Organization, they all advocate. So the work of the committees was simplified to what are the burning issues, and then that filtered up. And then we would able to, we could advocate. And one of the things that we did once every 6 weeks was, earlier on we did it more often, we had an all hands meeting where people would just let it rip. Are we missing something really important? Are we tone deaf on, and I got a lot more, to be honest. I got a sense of what we might be tone deaf on or missing from those all hands meetings, where people just kind of let it rip, express their frustration. So and we decided to, it's working. Let's not mess with the structure. So it's essentially a feedback loop that was loosely designed to allow for people to continue to deal with the existing organizations that lead their interests, but also kind of speak on behalf of Waterloo Region with one voice. So that worked out very well, and I think that sort of answers the question. How do people who are maybe not connected with? I mean, the interesting thing is, I'm scratching my head thinking, because we had a not-for-profit group, who did we miss? So because it was so expansive, like I can't think of any sector that we totally missed, but chances are we probably did. But anyway, that's the long answer to a simple question.
No, well, no, it's a simple question, but it was a complex set of equations to get everyone to feel as though they had a voice at the table, because you can't have everyone at the table. So Minto, part of that was, and to build on that is, there's hundreds and hundreds of restaurants and marketing and folks in your thing. You can't have everyone around the table, but how did your subcommittee in that, hospitality, tourism, culture subcommittee filter it through? Because I think it has worked, and I think we can always do better at saying, how do we filter those ideas up? But how has it worked so far to make sure those ideas are coming from the grassroots, if you will, the filter up through into the group?
Well, Tony's right. He answered part of it, and the working committees have really been tremendously helpful with that. And I sat on 3 of them: workforce, small business, and tourism. And on those committees, we also have people from the communities, whether they're municipality staff or BIAs or someone that sits on another organization that's able to bring forward ideas to those committees, which I can then bring to this table. And the other thing is that's helpful, that all of you sit on your other organizations that are provincial or national in Greg's case. And I also sit on the Tourism Industry Association of Ontario's board and the Tourism Industry Association of Canada. So I'm able to not only take the issues that we find that are common within Waterloo Region to this table, but I can also amplify those to the provincial and federal level as well. And I think that's been really helpful, because it also helps us to understand that this stuff is not just happening in Waterloo Region, it's happening across the country. And I think that when we're able to get the ear of government, then that means something. When we can say it's not just the opinions of the 5 of us. We're talking about our community, we're talking about our industry, we're talking about our industry across the country and across the province.
And I want to pick up on that community part, because I think I wouldn't want anyone listening in, and while this is through the chamber and we are business organizations, let's talk a little bit about the role that the communities play, because I think we have advocated on behalf of the charitable sector early on, and the devastating blow that early on was going to harm all the important work that they do in the community. We've talked about the importance of having strong municipalities, both through the pandemic and it coming out, as well as support for small business and sectors like hospitality and tourism. Maybe each of you can just describe how that community part impacted the work that we did, or the conversations that we had. Well, I'm going to start with you, Matt.
It's a great question, and I think you're wise to have us point out that, although we can be proud of the work we've done together, we're just one slice of the pie, right? It's a big community with a lot of complex challenges, and more importantly, just a ton of opportunity. And it's taken everybody putting an oar in the water to get us through the pandemic to the degree that we've made it so far, though we know we're not out of the woods, right? We've got this Delta variant that's really given us a hard time. And so we need folks to keep following the health protocols and just do all the things, wash the hands, get the shots, just do all the things, and we'll get through this with some extra help from government, I'll add. But in terms of the community, 2 examples really stand out for me, Ian, and they kind of go together. If you look at staysafescreen.ca and chambercheck.ca, to me, those are great microcosms of how this community has come together to fight this pandemic and take care of each other, right? So with StaySafeScreen.ca and ChamberCheck, basically, as most folks who would be tuning in are aware, Waterloo Region became unique in Canada for how rapidly and in such a community partnership model pushed out a process for getting rapid screening out the door to small businesses and to community members through StaySafeScreen.ca for community members and ChamberCheck.ca for small business. Because it's an essential tool in the toolkit to fight COVID-19 and get the economy reopened, which is priority 1 through 19 for all of our organizations, right? And so just the way that we've been able to partner with the local hospitals, the way that we've been able to partner with local health teams, the way that our organizations have come together, the way that we've come together with civil servants. I mean, these are some of the unsung heroes of the pandemic. These men and women are patriots. They are working just as hard as any one of us, whether it's at Queen's Park or the federal government in Ottawa. So I think that the work that we've done together to get rapid screening out the door in a big, noisy way and kind of lead the way for the rest of the country has been a great model to follow. And again, it's because we have that ability to collaborate, and credit's where it's due. No government has handled the pandemic perfectly. I think that's abundantly clear. But good on the government of Justin Trudeau, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, for buying all these rapid screening kits and getting them to us by the truckload. Good on Premier Doug Ford for cutting red tape so people could self-administer. And of course, the cherry on the top of the whole process was the how-to video with Greg DeRoche. That was my personal highlight from the pandemic. But I think that's a bit of a microcosm of how we've come together.
Yeah, Greg, we joke around with that. That's maybe something you can pick up on is the work that we've done together, but I think it's broadened out to this group. When we came up with the rapid screening and worked with Ian Klugman, the federal bureaucrats, provincial bureaucrats, saying, how can we do this? And when we discovered, as I said to you, when you said, well, we tried it just before we launched, and I said, a well-trained basset hound could do these screening kits. And you said, well, it's like an episode of Dumb and Dumber with you and I doing it, and we didn't harm each other. We knew that it was possible to get out to the maybe talk a little bit. I mean, that's an example of not just our chambers doing that, because that's now across the province, 105 or 10 chambers across the province. It's in Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, or British Columbia, and going into eastern provinces because, as Matt points out, it's one of the tools in the toolkit. But talk a little bit about how we work together with all the folks that needed to be at the table, because I think it is kind of a unique thing for us here in Waterloo Region. We just get it done.
Well, I was kind of wondering, do some of these things just happen by accident? I don't think they happen by accident. They happen because there's something in our water or something in the air in the Waterloo region that just drives the entrepreneurial spirit, and let's take a chance. We know that driving off the cliff probably isn't the right thing, but there's got to be a parachute in this car somewhere. And I think we kind of live, eat, sleep, and breathe that. But you talk about the community, and you talk about this, like the community rallied around that program, whether it was stopping off at a bus wrapped and saying, come and get COVID screened, or whether it was, a small business saying, geez, how do I keep my employees safe? I'm scared every single day I wake up that there's going to be an outbreak. This is all community stuff. And we look at how the community rallied around small businesses, and in particular, the hospitality businesses who were shut, closed, tight, but said, hey, you can order online or you can give us a call and we'll package your dinner up real nice and deliver it right to the curb. We all rallied around to make things happen without once having a core principle of, gee, how can we get that shiny button put on our lapel or that feather in our cap or that money in the bank? It was all about us working together collaboratively, finding ways to help, whether it's a business or whether it's individuals, because largely the screening kit, yes, it's helping businesses, but you know what, 90% of the people that are partaking in self-screening twice a week in their workplace are saying it's helping them mentally. They feel safer going home to their families. They feel more comfortable working in the workplace beside their buddy. It's all, this whole thing from our perspective, while we'll always be branded the business organizations of the region of Waterloo, we're really not. We're community organizations that feed the success of our community through business and enterprise. And I think, that's really what's been evident here. And I think more than ever, it's evident to a lot of people in the community that our organizations are really centric around creating a great quality of life here and taking care of people.
Tony, one of the things that has come out of this, and I think that building on the community aspect, right, was a conversation you had with Eclipse Automation, like so economic development, and Steve Mai and his team saying, hey, we want to do something. We know this is airborne, and we what can we do to help the community? And I think you said, if you had some masks, that would be great. And then lo and behold, 1.5 million masks descended on various municipal and at the Cambridge Chamber, and we're giving away. That's the type of community support that was mobilized because of things we were talking about. And you negotiated for the ambassador program that Minto talked about, a variety of things. Maybe talk a little bit about, there's a lot of examples, but maybe that example is one that illustrates sort of the sense of business and community.
Yeah, that's an example of a relatively, small donation in the big scheme of things that could have a very large, both meaningful impact and a symbolic impact. The symbolic impact is, wear masks because the virus is airborne, and be keenly aware of helping your customers, not just your employees, but your customers feel confident about coming back into the workplace, right? And it's part of the demand side of the equation. But Steve Mai in particular has been such a great innovator with his Made in Waterloo region, Made in Cambridge, N95 line, and different types of respirators that are in high demand all over the world. And he was early in recognizing that kind of the need for PPE would be widespread, and it wouldn't just kind of magically disappear one day, right? This isn't SARS-CoV-1, that spread through large droplets, right? This is an airborne virus, and it'll likely continue to be around for years, right? And the way ahead includes not just vaccination, but really good PPE. And now a Waterloo region has 3 producers of really high quality masks, and that probably 10 or 11, but 3 that are notable, and in that they're producing N95s, right? So that's a wonderful thing, and the ability to get 100 to 200 to 500 masks to the small business community. You do the math for 4,000 or 5,000 small businesses. That helps with their cost reduction. It helps with you add that plus the rapid screening and some ventilation measures. That's the way ahead. It's kind of being keenly aware of the things that we need to do to stay safe. And I thought, obviously, over and above it being a great gesture, it's a testimony to the fact that these businesses are really about community building, right? And they're about having an impact on social and economic life. And as Greg touched on, mental health. People are starting to feel safer, and that's going to be important because, we're never going to go back to a calm, confident, normal until people feel quite comfortable going back out and without thinking twice, right? And we're a ways from that, right?
Minto, just picking up on that, obviously the first to close, last to open is going to be the hospitality tour, fully anyway, the hospitality tourism. But some of the resiliency and the innovation that's come from some of in the sector is incredible. In again, pivoting to curbside, doing all the things they can do to do as much business as possible. But also the sense of leadership that has come from your sector around people that are struggling, especially when they're not working with mental health issues, And you've got leaders in the hospitality tourism sector who have been sort of mentoring the smaller businesses. And I guess I just have seen it in probably the hardest hit sector in the entire region of Waterloo, which is hospitality tourism and attractions, and that's the sort. But they've supported one another and given us ways that we can support them. Maybe talk a little bit about that part of it, because it's been devastating, at the same time in some ways pretty uplifting to see how people have supported each other within this space.
Yeah, it is, and building on what Tony said, being able to provide masks and screening tests also gave some of the small businesses one less thing to worry about. They had so many things on their plate to be concerned about, and I think that provided them some comfort anyway. And the hospitality community is a pretty small community. I mean, Waterloo region isn't huge, but mostly everybody kind of knows each other or knows of each other. So when they're starting to face major challenges like we did during COVID, they're more than happy to share. And you'll recall that one of the things that we did late last fall, and we did it again in January, was we had an open call for restaurants. And so we had chefs and restaurant owners on a panel to answer questions from a group of their own about how they're managing and what they're doing to try and respond and try to make a little bit of money, or at least pay the rent. So, going digital is one thing, and the small business community, many of them got pushed ahead into going digital much earlier than they probably would have wanted to, but that's probably a good thing. It's maybe one of the silver linings for our industry. And then others came up with other ideas of how to do things that were safe, and it didn't last long, sadly, but the museum and Bingaman's collaborated on having a drive-through for the dinosaur exhibit, and that attracted a lot of people. The drive-in at Bingaman's, and as you said, the delivery service, and we started working with a company that helped businesses, restaurants, put their menus online, and then provided a delivery service that was less expensive than Skip the Dishes or Uber, with the huge commissions that they were charging. So, it's again a group of people that some of them knew each other, some of them knew of each other, and providing a forum for them to actually talk to one another was one of the things that we were able to do, and hopefully help solve some problems or answer some questions for them.
We're coming to the end of our time, so I got two more questions, and I think it's important that I'm always interested, even in Greg's answer on this one. I try not to be interested in his answers, but I am actually on this one. Maybe just to go around the table, because I think it's important for us to be realistic. I mean, as Matt's pointed out, the Delta variant here is very problematic. We have to make sure that we get vaccinations up so that we can get on top of that. Double vaccination to kind of get that 2-dose summer where we can get back to at least having schools open, if not quite fully with sports and everything else, but to have an in-person experience, which is really important. But I think we need to be honest and realistic with not only business, with the community about this is not going to suddenly snap your fingers and everything's going to go back to the way it was. So what's your honest and realistic expectation of what the next 3 to 4 months is going to look like into the early fall? And what's needed for us to kind of get to that and beyond? And I'll maybe start with Matt.
Yeah, really important question, Ian. I think that's the chapter that influencers and policymakers are trying to grapple with right now. So, what does normal look like? I think that things will eventually become, to look quite normal, like they were before the before times, or during the before times. I would say two things. Number one, I think the future of work, which is a kind of a body of literature and thinking that is very germane to Communitech's work and to all of ours, that has been thrust forward quite a bit. And so hybrid workplaces and things of that nature, there's a playbook there that hasn't been entirely written yet. And I know Communitech and and some of our partners are working really hard to close that gap to help businesses navigate, what does it look like now when you can access global talent, global competitors can access your talent, people might want to have some of the flexibility that they had during the pandemic to stay home and work from home a little bit more. How do you win in that environment? So I think that's one big key that I'm looking forward to seeing. The other, and I think I join a great many of Canadians and leaders in the business community in saying we need to work very closely with our friends in the federal government to achieve crystal clear messaging on what does it mean when everybody's got 2 doses. Because we've seen recent comments from federal officials, and they're working hard. They're working so hard, and I'm grateful to them. We've seen comments from them that lack maybe a little bit of clarity around what does it mean when everybody has 2 doses. I think that I would like to hear somebody say it means we can go back to normal and we can just do normal better. But there seems to be some tiptoeing around that. So let's get the science out there. Let's talk about it openly, and let's get some clear direction so people know what we're doing all this for. Because I'm doing this so that my life can go back to some semblance of normal with my family, my friends, my church community, and things of that nature. So that's what I'm doing, and until someone tells me I can't go back to normal, that's what I'm doing. So I'd really like some clarity from the Fed.
Minto, what is that? What are the things you're looking for in terms of the next 3 or 4 months?
I completely agree with Matt. Number one, I mean, we need to open, and that is going to solve so many problems for us, for our small businesses. If they can actually open and generate some revenue and get their employees back to work, that is going to really be a huge salve on the wound of COVID. But I'd like the federal government too to look around the world at what's happening in other countries that have been successful at opening, because they don't seem to be doing that. I understand that they're working hard, but they need to look at the science. They need to look at what countries are doing that have been successful around the world and start to adopt some of those practices moving forward.
Gregory, you're on.
I think what's really, really important is for us to understand that we don't have full knowledge and science on everything that's happened in the last year, and that's part of the problem. Right now, there's, we get questions every single day. If I've been double vaccinated, should I rapid screen? Yes, you should, because in fact, there have been cases of asymptomatic, fully vaxxed individuals who have actually carried the virus into different workplaces or wherever. So we're at a different stage than we maybe are, because we don't have that information. Does it allow you to spread? Can you still carry it? We need much more data to be able to drive that and understand that. So I am very optimistic, though. I think we'll get to a much better place in 3 months. But I think there's still going to be some science and some data that's going to have to be uncovered before we can get to understand fully when Matt will be able to do what he wants to do every single day.
I'm just going to echo Greg's comment, and I'm going to say 2 things. I think the worst is behind us, and I'm hopeful that the lockdowns are behind us as well. So that's kind of my sense here.
Okay, we're out of time in 1 minute, but I do want to go around and take 1 minute. And while it may change from what we've been doing during the pandemic, what do you see, or what value do you see? And we've answered this, but this is sort of the conclusion question. What's the value of Best Waterloo post-pandemic? Because it's going to look different, but what's the value of it from your perspective, Tony?
That we don't need to exist.
Okay, we are though. We are going to exist, but we don't need to. I get that. Minto.
Yeah, I'm not with Tony on that. I don't want to break up the band. So, I'm hoping that we can continue to collaborate, because I think our organizations working together is one of the best things that we can do to strengthen the Waterloo region from an economic and as a destination perspective, talent attraction, physician attraction, visitor attraction.
Gregory.
I think Minto is absolutely right, and so is Tony. because we don't have to exist. We're going to choose to exist so that we can build a strong and vibrant global community that's recognized around the world. And I think that's the best value that we can contribute back to our communities.
And Matt.
I'm not fussed about the how or the what, but I think the why is really important. And the why is this business community deserves every ounce of weight we can put behind them. And so by working together, we can deliver on some of that. So, you know, what form this takes going forward, not fussed about that. That's small ball. But big ball is making sure that our business owners and entrepreneurs have the best possible representation in civil society, and that's us. So we have to keep working together in some form, and I look forward to it.
I think as we and kudos to all of you. It's been a pleasure working with you, and I do think that the part to keep in mind here, and I think Greg may have said this, or we've all touched on it, is it's not the. I think we've been lucky because we all do get along, and that has been helpful in this crisis environment. But I think it's not going to matter so much moving forward when there are new people in the chairs, and there will be over time. I think the importance that we've discovered of our organizations working together, as Minto's pointed out, far outweighs not working together. So I think the more we can kind of cement that it's less about the people than it is about the organizations and that big picture that Matt talks about, the better off we'll be. Listen, I want to thank all of you for joining me today. Taking time out of your busy schedule to highlight the important work that we've been doing together as a community, but also as Best Waterloo. That does bring us to the end of today's session. So thanks again to our title sponsor, Manulife, our platinum sponsor, the Immigration Partnership of Waterloo Region, this month's presenting sponsor, Grant Thornton, and today's speakers, Minto, Greg, Tony, and Matt. And finally, to all of you for joining us today, we hope to see you again soon. For details and to register for the next one, go to greaterkwchamber.com. Join us for our season finale on Wednesday, July the 7th, actually, at 1 p.m. for 60 successes in 60 minutes. Join us for a collaborative session where local businesses will share their successes from the past year and how they achieved it. By the end of the hour, you'll have 60 new ideas to implement for your own business. Come prepared to share your own business successes, whether it's with government funding programs, solving talent needs, pivoting business operations, and anything else. Because if it's Wednesday, it's the Business Success Series. So I'll remind you to stay positive, test negative, and get vaccinated. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.